Hey, Abby.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm really good. And how about yourself?
I'm well, very well. Back home here in Romania.
Very good. Well, I'd like to ask you a few questions today so that uh, people can get to know you a little bit better and know your practice a little bit better. So, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. So, let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself. So, how long have you been doing your practice? Did you get into it organically? Were you always groomed to do this kind of work? Share a little bit about yourself and how you got here today.
How much time do you have and how long can I speak? I can
That's
I
up to
can
you.
start from my birth process, and because the yoga was involved there, I deeply believe that. But let's say, okay, let me walk you through it in a very fast forward manner. Um, I think I figured out much later in during my adult years that as a kid I was dyslexic, and I had learning challenges of this academics and all that. My parents, thankfully, due to the lack of a psychotherapist or a psychologist, took me to a monk, to the yoga teacher, and asked, okay, if this guy can be fixed. And that was the beginning of formal yoga learning. And must have been about 6 7 years old. And that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship with yoga, on and off. As truth must be told, I hated yoga with all my heart because I found it very boring and static, and had no juice in it, what a small child will enjoy. As I reached my teens, my hero was Bruce Lee, and I had fallen in love with that guy, his principles, his teachings, and to see a Shaolin monk, it was just the perfect hero in a child's mind, and I loved him deeply. But as I continued my yoga practice, along with that, I started practicing martial art. My karate teacher, he insisted that I should also practice yoga when I'm not training with him. The same thing was told to me by my swimming teacher. So, yoga was that sweet buffer between all other practices that I was doing. And then, long story short, I felt, this is something that I would really like to spend time with, because I was feeling good about myself, with myself, when I started practicing them on a very regular basis. And then, as I completed my formal education in engineering and all that, I started spending more time in the ashram with my master, and in a very organic manner, I became a yoga teacher. And one fine morning, my master told me, okay, go out and teach. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm following the simple uh, guidance given by him, and I'm sharing the wisdom of this beautiful ancient as well as a contemporary science, which is yoga.
Very nice. So, it wasn't something that was planned, it was something that just happened naturally, organically in your life.
Yeah, true. Organic, because while growing up, I was not really keen on becoming a yoga teacher. And in those years, there was nothing like a teacher's training program where you go for 200 hours or 500 hours and you come out with a certificate and you become a yoga teacher. I think we have practiced 10,000 hours plus, direct learning and practicing with our teachers and all that. But still, there was no such certification process. That's why I would say, yeah, it was a very organic way of observing and learning, and if I may say, it's more about becoming than just acquiring some skill that I can share with others. So that was never in the forefront of how can I become a better teacher. It was more about how can I become a better yogi, or even a better person.
Mm, I like that. So, would you consider yourself then still a student of yoga?
I love this question. I was asked this question many times before. I think one lifetime is too short to grasp what yoga is. It takes multiple lives to understand maybe even the surface reality of what yoga has to offer. Um, I'm an eternal student of yoga, and this is how I would like to remain. The learning has absolutely no whatsoever end. It's an ongoing, continuous journey.
It's very true. Um, so, uh, nowadays, yoga, when I say that, yoga means so many different things. Now, where you are, maybe where you were trained in India or you're practicing Romania, might look very different than some of the practices where I live in Canada, in Ontario. And so I just was wondering how you define yoga in your practice, and how you may or may not see it look different than some other people's definition of yoga.
I was saying yoga is an evolving science, and it is so vast for almost anyone to get a grasp of the wholesomeness of yoga is very challenging. So our perception of yoga is largely dependent on from the tangent we are approaching to this vast science, bank of knowledge. You will notice that in the West, a large majority of the yoga teacher, they are coming from fitness background. They have previously practiced Pilates or aerobics or calisthenics and stuff like that. So when they look into yoga, they primarily looking at postures, they are looking at the alignment. And in the West, and I know I'm slightly generalizing, majority of the practitioners of yoga, they are referring as yoga postures, yoga asanas, and with a little bit of toppings of breath work or contemplative practices, but largely they are talking about posture based practices which they are calling it yoga. Now in East, especially at the foothill of Himalaya, the yoga that was practiced for centuries, at first it's a philosophy, secondly it's the science of well-being, it's the science of self-actualization. You want to unleash your deeper wholesome potential. Now for that, posture is definitely one small aspect of it, but then there is how you're breathing, how can you contemplate, how can you associate yourself with the positivity, how do you approach action, how do you approach your relationship with the ecosystem. So there are many dimensions of yoga which, when we put all of them together, we start harboring and nourishing the homogeneous, wholesome nature of humanness. So, to me, yoga will be when we can connect to that totality, we can call ourselves yogi. Otherwise, yes, we are asana practitioners. We are acrobats. So we can say we are very flexible. Those of you who are practicing, the physical based yoga practices. So yeah, they have their benefit, but looking through the classical lens of yoga, it's slightly polarized to one aspect of yogic practices.
Hmm. I like that. So we're really practicing more one limb or one branch of yoga, but not um, more of a yogic lifestyle or yoga in the fullness of what it could offer us. Very good. Now, Avi, you're also an Ayurvedic practitioner, is that right?
I am.
You
I have studied Ayurveda therapies. I'm a certified Ayurveda massage therapist, and I have studied Ayurveda to understand how the body mind combination is working and brings harmony and balance in the life.
So, Avi, in your experience, how does Ayurveda complement the psychological principles you've studied? Because I understand that you also have some background in psychology, and more nowadays in the West, I also am hearing psychologists, people on podcasts and things like that. They might even be psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists. But lots of times now they're kind of referring to a lot of the terminology from yogic practices, Ayurvedic practices, Buddhist practices. How do you see those, again, I guess maybe from the Western, Eastern, merging together to complement each other? And how do you use that in your practice? Maybe a bit of a long question, but.
It's a good question. We can have a dedicated workshop or retreat on this topic only, the commonality between West and the East, and how Western psychology or well-being practices can be very nicely complemented with Ayurvedic philosophy and understanding to understand the human mind, emotion, and the psyche and the construct. When we're talking about Ayurveda, Ayurveda is predominantly based on the principles of how the five elements, that is earth, water, fire, air, ether, are interacting among each other, and how they are present within us. And if we can understand the nature of these five elements within us and around us, we will be able to create an harmonious relationship between the earth element that is present within me with the earth element that is present outside. How the fire is present in me, if I can understand that, I can also understand how the fire is getting triggered outside of me. Now, this is, at some point, it's a philosophical understanding, but when we dig deeper, and that works especially during the yoga therapy and the Ayurveda therapy sessions, we bring in this understanding of the elemental psychology into practice. And when we look at a person, or we try to, if I may say, to scan a person, we see imbalance in some of these elements. And some of these elements, when they're out of proportion, they usually create a disbalance in the way we are perceiving life, in the way we are expressing ourselves. So the aim is to create a balance in those five elements that are present within the body. We call them doshas. The literal meaning of doshas is something that is wrong, that's a mistake, so which has gone in out of proportion. So when we bring that in proportion, we fall in balance with the creation that's around us. So yeah, that's how we work. And one more thing that we need to keep in mind, in yoga in yoga and in Ayurveda, there is no body and mind. Body, mind are the same entity. So the approach is very simple. Any change that you bring in your mind will have an impact in the body. Any change that you bring in your body will have an impact in the mind. They're just the two ends of the same thread, the same rope. So, yeah, that's how we bring the change. It can be experienced with more ease than processing this information through the intellect.
I like it. So Abby, given that you're both a yogi and Ayurvedic practitioner, what does a typical morning look like for you? Is there an ideal routine that somebody can do? How do you change that around? Do you have any advice for people? And what does your practice look like?
Well, now definitely I feel slightly cornered with this question because I need to tell you the truth. There are many things that is recommended by yoga and Ayurveda that I should practice, but I don't do them all the time because I travel and I'm even within Romania. I'm teaching in 2 different cities and then I travel a lot. So I would like to give that as an excuse of not being 100% sincere with how a morning ritual and the routine could look like. But once said that, my usual morning will be something around 5 a.m. ish. I will be up. The day starts with some morning mantras to tune the mind, the psyche, connect with my guru, the cosmic energy. And I don't know how much of this is an Ayurvedic ritual or not, but I spend the first couple of minutes when I step out of the bed in smiling. I smile randomly, aimlessly, meaninglessly, and I want my body to know that it's going to be a good day. I have the possible resources and strengths in me to navigate through the day. Then the Ayurveda says of rituals which varies from season to season. So that is a good thing about yoga and Ayurveda. There is not one size fits all concept. Based on my body type, I will be choosing some practices, whether it's an oil pulling or tongue cleaning and stuff like that. Then eventually after, the morning habits, I will do my own asana pranayama practices. And so things varies from season to season and based on what I need. It's important to remember one thing, and I say that to all my students. Don't approach yoga with a dogmatic mindset. You're not practicing yoga or Ayurveda for the sake of yoga or Ayurveda. Yoga and Ayurveda are the tools which helps us to navigate through life and take us to a better state. So you need to know how to use the tool in which condition. There are days when your body will ask for more rest. So absolutely it doesn't make sense to go on the yoga mat and do 12 rounds of sun salutation. There are days when the energy is low because of the moon cycle or because of the moon phase. Then you need to focus more on the breath work and the calming meditative practices. There are days when you might wake up after a very strong dream that reveals you some energies from the depth of your psyche. That day, maybe simply sit down and journal. So the practices are highly dependent on the need of the time. Instead of trying to fit in a ritual or fit in a practice, I would say to take all these practices from this tangent can make us yogi, not just a yoga practitioner.
Okay, so last question for today. If you could teach the world one thing that would make life a little bit more peaceful or joyful, what would that be?
not to be harsh with yourself. Take yourself with a certain amount of kindness. I believe most of us are doing the best we can with the available resources of energy, of wisdom, of the time, based on all the responsibilities that are there on our shoulder. We are doing the best we can. So to keep that in mind might help us to remain connected, being sincere to that, okay, I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So that's it. Not to push yourself too much. That would be my mantra.
I like that, because I do believe many of us in Canada anyway, we take life very seriously, too seriously. So that's very good advice. Do you have anything else you would like to say that you would like to add for today, Abby?
Just continuation to what you just said, to add on to this. If we really explore our life, we might realize that majority of our problems in life landed up on our head only after we have started taking life too seriously. Seriousness is kind of a disease, and it is widespread, so we don't realize it. Well, I'm not referring that we should, be careless, but the seriousness never solves a problem. Rather, being playful, being cheerful, we expand our awareness and we might see way too many alternatives and possibilities to approach to life and to navigate through life.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, Abby. Well, I would like to thank you for taking the time out to talk to me today. And hopefully maybe we could have a part 2 or even a part 3 and continue the conversation going forward.
I thank you too for this wonderful conversation. And yes, of course, I love talking. We can share. You can tell me more about yourself. And yes, would be lovely to do that in the next days. Thank you.
Thank you.